But if you look at where he was going into last year, he was the de facto number 1 overall pick and the front runner to become the Heisman Trophy winner. That's where he was last offseason. And if you look at where he is today versus where he was last year, it's a pretty big difference in perception. Hello and welcome. It is Monday, April 28th, and we hope that you're enjoying the show wherever you get it, whether that's on the Apple Podcast platform, on Spotify, or if you're here with us via the ESPN Cultural YouTube channel. I'm Greg McElroy, and we're really happy that you're here with us. It's one of our favorite shows. We do it kind of at the end of April, early May, just about every year. We like to allow the dust to settle because I, for one, believe that this position in particular is very much dependent on what's around you. And today we will rank the top 10 quarterbacks in college football entering the 2025 season. Now, there's going to be a lot of people that are mad at this list, but understand there's a few pieces of the evaluation puzzle that we have to kind of put to the side because a lot of people want to project, and I'm great with that. I think that's fantastic. I will gladly project as well in some cases. But for you to be a top 10 quarterback without ever having played against a top tier team, it's a little bit tough for me to justify that ranking. Now, you can tell me that based on prospects, you can tell me based on what your star ranking was at a high school, you can tell me based on your situation, all that stuff might be true. But there's probably going to be a few people that are angry with where I have one particular player. But at that point, that one player has 2 starts in his career, and I just can't justify putting that person in the top 10 right now. You'll find out who it is, and it won't take long because I'm not beating around the bush. Can they slide up to the top 5, top 3, top 2, top 1 by season's end? Absolutely. This is an organic and ever-changing ranking. But this is where they're at right now. Based on what we saw last year, what they might do this year, the pieces around them, the situations that they have, and the growth potential that they have at the position. So let's kick things off with our honorable mention top quarterbacks in the country first. We'll kick things off with Arch Manning and the Texas Longhorns. Now, I love Arch Manning's skill set. I love his pedigree. I love some of the tape from last year. I love how he was utilized and how he's been developed by Steve Sarkisian and the staff. I think he is poised to have an amazingly successful career. Whether that's a 1-year career, 2 years, 3 years, however long he's in Austin, assuming he's there his whole career, I think he's absolutely positioned to be tremendously successful. That being said, he does not crack the top 10 just yet. Now, he makes our honorable mention list, which tells you how much we think about this young man. But first-year starters for me, it's very hard for me to ever justify putting a first-year starter ahead of guys that have actually done it when the bullets are flying. And you can say, well, the bullets flew last year. He had a couple starts. He threw for 939 yards, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 67+% completion. Also was very active with some of his rushing game and how he was utilized in the run game for Texas last year. I loved him. But I also need to acknowledge that a vast majority of his stats from last season were achieved against UT San Antonio, who was 71st in total defense, 124th in pass defense, against Louisiana Monroe, who was 83rd in total defense, and against Mississippi State, who was 126th in total defense. So while what I saw last year in spot start situations was tremendously good, a lot of really positive things on those performances. There are also a few things that need to be cleaned up, and I think they will be this upcoming year. And when he elevates his play against quality competition, that's when we'll start to really make the evaluation. So Arch Manning does not crack the top 10 just yet, but does make the honorable mention list, which is a pretty good place to be for a guy that's only started a couple games in his career. Move next and keep it in the state of Texas. We will go to Kevin Jennings at SMU. Now, his season last year was tremendous. Obviously led SMU to a college football playoff berth, led them to the ACC championship game, almost won the ACC championship game. But if you look at how he performed statistically, it was pretty dang good. 11 interceptions on the season, but the Penn State game is the one that everyone kind of remembers. And people remember a little bit of the first half of the ACC championship game. They might not remember the performance against Duke, but those 11 interceptions, they all kind of came in like 8 quarters. So it's kind of okay for a first-year starting quarterback, a guy that had played some, but not a ton, who didn't start the season as the starter, but eventually became the starter when they decided that Preston Stone couldn't take them where they wanted to go. So I thought he had a pretty dang good year. 65% completion, 350 rushing yards. He's not really a runner, but if you watch Kevin Jennings, he just makes a lot of plays. Like, he's a baller. You know what I mean? Like, there's things he does where it's like, wow, that was really impressive. But then there's also things that you watch him and you're thinking to yourself, golly, he's not even close to as good as he can be. And that is really encouraging. So I'm kind of buying low here with Kevin Jennings. Like, I think he is potentially in a situation where he could easily elevate into the top 5 in college football. But there are some mechanics that need to be cleaned up. For instance, when you watch him drop. When he drops, he's not a huge guy, right? He's not overly massive at 6'5". He can't just see over the line with ease. So he has a tendency, when he drops, he tends to drop a little bit too deep. And then when he sets up, he sometimes drops even deeper, even when he's set up. And that puts a lot of pressure on his offensive line. And those are areas that make it tough, because what should be a clean pocket becomes dirty or muddied because of his mechanics in the pocket. And we've seen that kind of time again. That's just one instance in which he can, if he does that a little bit better, he's going to make those tackles better. The ball's going to come out on time more often, more frequently, allow his receivers more time to run after the catch. So I'm really optimistic about what Kevin Jennings is going to be, but there's just a few mechanical things that I would love to see done just a little bit better this year. But as far as the playmaking ability, he checks that box because the guy just makes it happen. He's got some gamer mentality stuff that I love. And that's something you just can't coach, by the way. We'll move next to Taylen Green. And this is at Arkansas. And I think Taylen Green is painfully underrated. Like, when you think about some of the most naturally gifted players in the sport, not very many people are immediately jumping out and saying, Taylen Green, Taylen Green, Taylen Green. Like, naturally gifted. A guy that can run, a guy that can throw, a guy that looks the part. He's big, he's physical, he's smooth. He had over 3,000 yards passing. He had nearly 3,800 total yards last year. That's pretty dang impressive. He had 23 touchdowns last year. His performance last year, in year 1 with Bobby Petrino, was the second best in the history of Arkansas football, behind Ryan Mallett in 2010. So if you look at what he did statistically, it was amazing. Now, here's the thing with Taylen Green. There are moments where he flashes and you're like, oh my gosh, like, wow. There's 2 guys in the country that can make that throw. There's 3 guys in the country that can make that play. Like, that's Lamar Jackson reincarnated. Like, how'd he do that? And there's other moments where you watch him and he'll throw one and it's like, what was that? Why'd he throw it there? That was way behind or too low or whatever the circumstances may be. So the inconsistency is there. It exists, but the ceiling is outrageous. And I'm banking with Taylen Green on a pretty considerable jump in year number 2 with Bobby Petrino. A year of comfort, a year of being more familiar with the SEC and the speed that's required to play at a high level in the SEC. He had some great moments last year, but there are also some moments that can be cleaned up. And if he can clean those things up and eliminate some of the misses, then Taylen Green's in a really good spot to leap into the top 10 when we put this list together here again in a couple months. Moving next to Luke Altmyer at Illinois. Now, I thought Luke Altmyer, he's a rock solid player for Illinois. Rock solid. I think he's underappreciated. He's never been a guy that just blows you away with his physical attributes. It's never really him. But if you look at some of the decision making, he had 6 games last year where he had multiple touchdown passes. And in those games with multiple touchdown passes, 0 picks. He kind of knew how to kind of have that clutch gene. He was the only quarterback in the FBS to toss 3 winning touchdowns in the final 2 minutes of regulation or in overtime. So he can get the job done. And I think that Luke Altmyer, while he might be somewhat limited from a skill set standpoint compared to the likes of, say, Taylen Green, he knows how to win. Like, he's a competitor. You can tell that. And he knows how to kind of get the job done. And the performance against Nebraska was really impressive. And the performance in the overtime win against Purdue was really impressive. The problem is Purdue, not a great team. And if that's kind of your bell cow performance, I'd like to see that performance against like Ohio State or maybe Penn State. But that's not up to Luke Altmyer. Now, he's going to have to do so now with a few new question marks at wide receiver. But I think year 3, having started in this system, he's poised to have another really good year. Then finally, on our honorable mention list, and this was a guy that was in our top 10 going into the season. He was in it, and he fell out because I don't know what's going to be around Nico Iamaleava at UCLA. Now, had he been at Tennessee, no doubt top 7, probably, maybe top 8. But now, not knowing what's to be expected as far as how comfortable is he within the offense. He'll have the summer, then he'll have fall camp, but then live bullets are flying. Last year, he had an amazing run game to lean on. He had a system that was ready-made to make it as easy on the quarterback as just about any system in the country. Now he goes into a summer where he's trying to develop a rapport with new teammates. He's trying to learn a new offense. There's just too many unknowns surrounding Nico Iamaleava to feel great about having him in the top 10. Now, I think he's got top 10, top 5 skill set for sure. Arm talent, throwing the ball downfield, tight spirals, accurate when things are perfect, tremendous athleticism for a guy that's 6'6". Yeah, he checks all the boxes physically. But now, with the situation that he is now playing in, I don't know if I can comfortably put him in the top 10. So he right now makes the honorable mention category, but if he can prove to me that there isn't any drop off, that there's actually progress made from where he was last year, then he'll be back in the top 10 very soon. At number 10 in college football at quarterback this year, it's Haynes King, quarterback of Georgia Tech. Now, numbers-wise, passing yards-wise, he's not going to blow you away. He threw for just 2,100 yards last year, but he did have an impressive 7-to-1 touchdown-interception ratio. It was actually 14-2, but do the math, pretty efficient too from a completion percentage standpoint. But his most dangerous attribute, that's his legs. Had 600 yards rushing, 11 rushing touchdowns. But what I love most when I watch Haynes King is just how competitive he is. I mean, he's an elite runner, but he is so competitive. I mean, he is tough as nails. He knows how to win. Every single one of his teammates will follow him through broken glass and fire en route to the end zone. I think he has done an amazing job in kind of revitalizing his career. He got chances at A&M, and it just never really materialized, never really happened for him. But man, these last couple of years at Georgia Tech, he's done an amazing job. He really has. In the last 2 years, he's rushed for over 1,300 yards and 21 touchdowns. And if you look at last year, he had to sit out in 2 games. He was limited and couldn't do much in 2 others, and still managed to eclipse over 2,000 yards passing. So that, I think, is pretty impressive. Now he's going into year number 6. How much better will he get? How much improved can he get? Will his supporting cast be the same? He did lose Eric Singleton after all to Auburn, but he still has Malik Rutherford. He's still got great speed at tailback. I think the offensive line is going to be rock solid, and I think his offensive coordinator knows exactly what positions to put him in so that Haynes King can feel comfortable and have success. I think Haynes King's a great college football player, and it's been a real joy to watch. But it's partly because of what he's willing to do and put his body on the line on a week-to-week basis to put the Yellow Jackets in position to win the game. At number 9, DJ Lagway of the Florida Gators. Now, this is a little bit of a projection. I'll admit, this is a projection. And you look at the numbers when you kind of get down to it, and you look at the completion percentage, sub 60, 12 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Like, when you watch him, the numbers are here, kind of middle tier, if not slightly below. But the plays that he makes are sensational. He's one of those guys that the stats don't really tell the whole story. You know what I mean? Like, you can watch them and you can draw your own conclusions. Maybe you see it a little differently than I do. That's perfectly fine. We agree to disagree. We have a list of 10 guys. We're all probably going to have them a little different. But I look at DJ Lagway and I look at how often he had to throw off balance. I look at how often he had to evade a blitzing defender and stay upright just long enough to deliver the pass accurately. I look at how often he had to make a guy miss just to keep a play alive and to get the ball out as an incompletion, as opposed to a 9-yard loss and a sack. Now, this is 100% me rolling the dice because he didn't get to go through spring camp at all. He's had a shoulder injury that he's been nursing, has been on the mend, got that worked on, got it fixed. They're assuring everybody that he'll be ready to roll come fall and that it won't have any limitations next year. But this is something that's been bothering him for a couple years. They had to get it fixed. They had to get it fixed now. But it's pretty obvious when you watch him against LSU, you watch him against Kentucky, you watch him against Ole Miss, you look at how he played against Tulane in the bowl game, and how he galvanized the entire locker room. As a starting quarterback last year, he went 6-1 as a true freshman. He completed 12 passes that went 40 or more yards, and I think has great precision and feel on the downfield throw. Remember, that 6-1 record, that one loss was against Georgia. He didn't get to finish that game. And at the time when he got hurt, they were in pretty good position to make life very difficult and uncomfortable for the Georgia Bulldogs. So I'll be curious to see how he does this year, but I'm buying DJ Lagway as a big time quarterback in the country this year. And I think at 9, you can make a case that that's probably a little bit too low with where he's likely going here in 2025. At number 8, this is not a household name for many. And I'm surprised. I am. And I think part of it is because people weren't really paying attention to what was going on at Baylor at the end of the season. But there were few quarterbacks in the country playing better than Sawyer Robertson there at the end of the year. And if you look at the numbers, over 3,000 yards passing, 28-8 touchdown interception, over 62% completion. I love the trajectory here with Sawyer Robertson. Like I feel like his best football is in front of him. And part of that is because you'll look at some of the guys that are returning in college football, a lot of which were either obvious starters or going into the season as a starter last year. And as a result, their play was really controlled, really good, felt great about it. But some instances, like a Kevin Jennings at SMU, like a Sawyer Robertson at Baylor, they're thrust into the starting lineup, like a DJ Lagway at Florida. They're thrust in the starting lineup, and then they didn't have the benefit of an entire offseason worth of work where they were getting reps with the ones, repping as the starting quarterback, not looking over their shoulders, sharing reps, getting more comfortable with the offense, fending off competition. Like, this is the first opportunity for Sawyer Robertson to have complete control of the offense in an offseason and have 8 months to prepare to be the starting quarterback. That makes me feel really good about where he's likely going to go. I think it's poised for a huge bump this year. He's got great physical measurables. I love the chemistry that's been developed between him and his offensive play caller, Jake Spavital. He always had a high ceiling. Now, he just signed to play at Mississippi State to go play for Mike Leach, but was one of the top recruits in the entire country when he came out in 2021. Had to wait a year before finally getting that chance last year, and then capitalized and had 9 straight 200-yard passing performances to finish the season, including nearly 450 against LSU in the Texas Bowl. So I love where things are. This is a guy that did not open the season as the starting quarterback and yet finished 6th in team history in touchdowns and 7th in passing yards. So that's at Baylor, by the way, where they have had a bunch of highly productive quarterbacks and highly productive offenses for many, many years, dating back to the mid-2000s, 2010s with Art Briles, RG3, and several others that really set the new standard for offensive quarterback play there in Waco. So super bullish on Sawyer Robertson. I feel really comfortable with where he comes at right now as our number 8 quarterback. At number 7, we will go to South Carolina, where we have LaNorris Sellers. All you got to do is just watch the young man play. Watch how big he is, but how effortless his moves are. It's kind of amazing to me that a guy that's 240 pounds can move laterally as easily as he does. Like, I would expect LaNorris Sellers, you just watch him, I would expect him to be a power runner, QB power, running guys over. It's not really how he plays. He's light on his feet. He can move. He can escape. He can keep his eyes downfield, and he's really, really accurate when he gets his feet set. And I think he's done a better job as the season went along last year, keeping his eyes up when he scrambles and staying a passer when he's on the move. As a result, he went for over 2,500 yards, 18 passing touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. But it was the efficiency. It was the efficiency of nearly 66% completion and almost 700 rushing yards, including some big ones, including a 75-yarder against LSU out the gate there in week 2 or week 3. I think LaNorris Sellers is in a really good position because there is no way, and maybe I'm being naive here, there is no way his receiving core is as big of a question mark this year. There's just no way that's possible. Last year, their best wide receiver was a tight end in Josh Simon, who was excellent, a great player. But they had a lot of question marks at wide receiver. At one point, their best wide receiver was their slot receiver. He was a true freshman as well, but he was banged up a little bit as the season went along. So if they can just figure out the pieces around LaNorris Sellers, he's poised for a great 2025 season. He already won SEC Freshman of the Year last year, was third team all-conference, which is pretty amazing. And by the way, he was banged up some of the year with an ankle injury. So if you can just marry up his skill set with what he can do on the ground and improvising and how he had to take the game over against Clemson and going for 170 yards and 2 touchdowns, I think this is a young man, the sky's the limit for what he could be. So I think LaNorris Sellers at 7 is a great spot for now, but don't be surprised if when we revisit this here at season's end, he's up a little bit higher, assuming his supporting cast becomes a little more reliable. At number 6, a guy that had we done this ranking a year ago, he probably would have been number 1 and been number 1 by a decent-sized margin. That's Carson Beck of the Miami Hurricanes. And you're going to look at his 2024 campaign, and the numbers aren't going to necessarily wow you in a positive or a negative way. He threw for nearly 3,500, 28-12 touchdown interception ratio, and nearly 65% completion. So pretty solid. But if you look at where he was going into last year, he was the de facto number 1 overall pick and the front runner to become the Heisman Trophy winner. That's where he was last offseason. And if you look at where he is today versus where he was last year, it's a pretty big difference in perception. What's amazing to me, though, is that there are so many people that have pointed all of Carson Beck's flaws out without acknowledging the inconsistencies of not just his wide receiver core, which led the country in drops, but also his offensive line. I thought his offensive line was so leaky at times last year that it was almost hard for Carson Beck to be comfortable at all. You look at how many times he got hit in the Kentucky game. That was week 2 or week 3. He got hit time and time again. And I think at that point he got a little bit rattled because the offensive line was really struggling. That carried over at times and kind of peaked against an Ole Miss team that teed off. He had to throw it and take chances on several occasions. Balls were tipped, balls were picked. But if you look at how he kind of hung in there, I thought Carson Beck battled last year, man. And while there was a bit of a rough midseason stretch where there were a lot of interceptions, everyone wants to remember the Texas game. People want to remember other performances as well. He did have some moments where he was forcing the football. I think there were moments where he's maybe hearing the outside noise and pressing. As a result, he still had 5 games with 3+ touchdown passes. He also had the 2 final regular season games where he led a pretty remarkable comeback against Georgia Tech. And he also still carries a career record of 24-3 with nearly 7,500 passing yards. So I understand he's coming off elbow surgery, and there are questions surrounding that. But I still believe that him now with Shannon Dawson and the young weapons that Miami has that are likely to break out this season, you could find him back very much in the mix as one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Shannon Dawson just helped cultivate a run with Cam Ward that resulted in the number 1 overall pick. Carson Beck has that type of potential as well. Now, he doesn't have the mobility, doesn't have the playmaking ability and trying to create and playing off schedule. But if you need a guy that can just sit back there in the pocket and pick you apart, Carson Beck's that guy. And this is an offense that led the FBS in yards and ranked 3rd in passing with Cam Ward at the helm last year. So I think when you look at where Carson Beck's going to be at season's end, I would be surprised if he's not back in the good graces of many from a talent evaluation standpoint, and from recognizing that, man, he was one heck of a college quarterback in his time at both Georgia and his time at Miami. I really believe that's going to happen this year. At number 5, it's LSU starting quarterback Garrett Nussmeier. He had an amazing 2024 campaign, went for over 4,000 yards, 29-12 touchdown interception ratio, and 64% completion. It's, I think, kind of amazing that Garrett Nussmeier is still, in many ways, kind of flying under the radar. Like, I feel like he's a guy that had such a great year last year. But people have pointed to some of the mistakes that were made, like the interception thrown against A&M. People have kind of focused on the negative. While I look at Nussmeier and I look at some of those interceptions, yeah, he's a gunslinger. Like, he takes chances with the football. Like, sometimes, yeah, does it concern me how often he's willing to roll the dice and try to fit it in a small window? Yeah, maybe. But at the same time, like, he pulls it off more than most. And I think that he is in a really good position to go along with the weapons that they've now added. You already have Aaron Anderson, but Nick Anderson, I think you got some guys that can play on the perimeter. I like their personnel at tight end. I think, I'm hopeful that LSU will take some of the pressure off Garrett Nussmeier this year, because they didn't run the ball hardly at all last year, partly because they didn't have amazing depth at running back. But I think that this is a great spot for Garrett Nussmeier to be in. Now, are there areas where I would like to see him improve? Of course. I don't want to see him be quite as aggressive. I think understanding what the situation requires would be somewhat helpful. I think understanding, hey, I can't make that throw there. I'll just check it down. Like, checking it down is not a sign of weakness. Like, you could just take a check down and live to play the next play and pick up 8 yards underneath, and now it's 2nd and 2. And the whole playbook is available to you at 2nd and 2, as opposed to driving it between 3 defenders, maybe pulling it off, but maybe also getting picked and returned to the house. So I'd like to see him clean that up a little bit, but the biggest thing I would like to see from Garrett Nussmeier this upcoming year is a willingness to take off and run. Last year, and I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I believe Garrett Nussmeier had about 15 scrambles last year. Like, thereabouts, right around 15 scrambles. There are some quarterbacks that have 15 scrambles in one game. Nussmeier had that over the course of the entire season. He never wanted to really keep the defense honest with his legs. Now, he did it a couple times. One in particular against Ole Miss, where they needed it, and he took off, and he got what was a key 3rd down conversion en route to the game-winning touchdown drive. So it's in there. He can do it. He's plenty athletic. He just didn't really show a real willingness to do it last year. So I would really like to see him grow in that area. But man, I am really bullish on this young man. He's in year 5 at the program, 2nd year as a starter, the unquestioned starter, obviously, at LSU, and one of the most talented quarterbacks in the entire SEC. So I think he's going to cause a lot of problems, assuming he can continue to grow and develop and continue to pull off those amazing throws and continue to hit teams downfield. But I think just a little bit better understanding of game management and willingness to take off and run would take him from a great player to an elite player. I don't think the gap's that wide, by the way. I think he's really close. Just a couple of things that could be tweaked just ever so slightly, and he'll be cooking with gas. We'll go next to number 4. It's Drew Allar of Penn State. Went for over 3,000 yards passing, did a pretty good job with touchdowns and interceptions last year, 24-8, and had 300 yards rushing. So if you look at where Drew Allar was last year, there were some aspects of his game the year before that I really liked. There were aspects where I sat there and say, oh, all right, this is good. He's smart. He's taking what the defense gives him. He's not taking any unnecessary risks. But then you go back and you watch him, you're like, well, he's got plenty of arm. His weapons are good enough. Why aren't we pushing it down the field just a little bit? With that run game, I would think that the Penn State offense would be able to take a lot of shots downfield, and they should be able to create and manufacture big plays. It just never really materialized. Well, then last year with new offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki, you saw them start to take the top off the defense with a lot more regularity. And that was something that you could see with Drew Allar. His confidence grew as the season went along. He's already a very efficient player, but now he's an efficient player to every corner of the field. He was at one point very efficient on the 10 and under, 15 and under throws. Those were great. The completion percentage was great. The efficiency numbers were awesome. But now you have to be really accounting for the downfield throw too, because he's got it in there and they've shown it and they're not afraid to do it. And I think now going into year 3 as a starter, complete control in his second year of Andy Kotelnicki's system, he should be poised for a really solid leap forward this upcoming year. Now, there's still some questions about maybe the supporting cast. How do they feel about their wide receivers? Is that group a group that can improve? Can they adequately fill the void of Tyler Warren, whose departure will certainly be felt in many ways for the Penn State Nittany Lions? Can they adequately do those things? I think they can. I think they have good youth at tight end that they're very excited about. And I think they have pretty good weapons at wide receiver and weapons that might even be slightly more consistent than the group they had last year. So I think there's a lot of reason to believe that Drew Allar and his athleticism, his big arm, his comfort, his ability to play fast and anticipate, and his supporting cast improving, there's a lot of reason to believe that he's in a really good spot to take a leap forward because no one denies the talent. The talent is there. His decision-making process, for the most part, is there. I think now is about going from being a really good player to an elite player, and I think he's a guy that can potentially do that with his skill set. At number 3, and this is higher than most people would have him, but I would encourage you just to do some due diligence and dive in. Because what you see when you watch Arizona State's Sam Leavitt is a guy that can break you down in a bunch of different ways. His stats aren't going to blow you away. He finished last year with 2,800 passing yards or so, 2,885. 24-6 touchdown interception ratio, under 62% completion, but he did add 440 rushing yards and 6 touchdowns. What I think is amazing with Leavitt is he kind of was under the radar for most of the year last year, and then people finally got a chance to watch him in the Big 12 championship game, and they got to watch him in the college football playoff game against the Texas Longhorns. You watch him in those 2 games, you're like, whoa, all right, this guy's a guy. Now, a lot of the conversation for Arizona State last year centered around Cam Skattebo, right? Like everyone want to talk about Cam Skattebo, like what a great running back. Oh my gosh, he's such a war daddy. He was all those things. But because of the attention that Cam Skattebo got, people did not pay enough attention to what Sam Leavitt was doing for this team last year. And I think what's amazing too is that while he arrived from Michigan State, kind of under the radar, he was in the same quarterback room as Jaden Rashada. Everyone want to talk about Jaden Rashada, but everyone also, you kind of hear from the staff and hear from people like, man, this Leavitt kid there's something about this kid, and was a little bit up and down out of the gate last year. But late in the regular season, he started to figure out, all right, this guy can do it. He finished the regular season, 3 passing touchdowns or more in 5 of his final 7 games. He had 3 more scores against Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. He avoided a multiple interception game in his first season as an FBS starter, which is pretty dang impressive. And he quietly had 40 or more rushing yards in 6 games. What I love most, though, with Sam Leavitt, he's a chain mover. The guy just finds a way to move the chains. If it's 3rd and 6, okay, sitting there, the defense on 3rd and 6 or 3rd and 7, they're sitting there thinking, all right, he's going to have to throw it to beat us, right? Well, not necessarily the case. Leavitt would find guys open, fine, he'll take it. But if you get a little bit too aggressive in defending the pass, he could take off, make one guy miss, and all of a sudden he falls forward for an 8-yard gain, 1st and 10 Sun Devils. And he did that time and time again. It was probably 2 or 3 possessions a game in which he kept the drive alive with his legs. And that is points on the board. So while he's not going to necessarily blow you away with how big he is, how wide he is, how huge his arm is, I think this is a guy that people, when they watch him, are going to fall in love with this young man. Like I think the only thing that's working against Sam Leavitt right now is how much people have watched of him. Because the more you watch, the more you'll be impressed. So I encourage all of you, if you're unfamiliar or if you're interested, take a peek at what Sam Leavitt did at Arizona State last year. And if he can continue to kind of build on what he already established, then Arizona State could very well find themselves back in the college football playoff conversation again here in 2025. In at number 2, it's John Mateer of Oklahoma. Now, formerly of Washington State. And this is pretty high for most people when evaluating the quarterback spot, but went for over 3,100 yards last year, 29 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, added 826 rushing yards, and 15 rushing touchdowns. Now, part of my evaluation here was how Cam Ward did at Miami. I will admit that helps. That does help in the evaluation because we saw Cam Ward as the starting quarterback at Washington State 2 years ago. Like, we saw it. And we saw how he performed, the numbers he put up, how he made plays. And then we watched John Mateer step in and replace Cam Ward last year. And a lot of those same plays that Cam Ward made, John Mateer was now making. And you thought, well, maybe it's the system, or maybe these are just two really dang good players. Well, Cam Ward goes to Miami, lights the world on fire, now has become the first overall pick of the NFL draft. I'm not projecting that for John Mateer. But I do think when I look at John Mateer, his skill set does remind me a little bit of a slightly more run-heavy Baker Mayfield. Now, Baker Mayfield, from a build standpoint, they kind of look the same. But from a build standpoint, Baker Mayfield is more likely to kind of carve you up from the pocket. John Mateer, look, he can carve you up from the pocket. Not quite like Baker Mayfield could. But he can carve you up from the pocket, but man, he will kill you with his legs. And if you look at how he helped Washington State in what was kind of a tumultuous couple of years for Washington State. It's been a little bit challenging with the exodus of players and moving from the P5 to the G5. It's been challenging to say the least. Well, he at one point had Washington State at 8-1 last year. He beat Texas Tech. He beat Washington. He had a rushing touchdown in all but one game and had nearly 70% completion in 7 of his 12 games. He led the FBS in touchdowns last year with 44 and was the only quarterback with 20 or more passing touchdowns and 10 or more rushing touchdowns. Now, what I love most now is that he's going to be going to a place alongside his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, so there's already great familiarity there. He knows exactly what Ben Arbuckle is trying to do. I think part of the reason why Ben Arbuckle's at Oklahoma is because John Mateer and him with a package deal, and they're going to try to improve on an offense that was 97th at scoring, 119th in passing. So there's only one direction to go at Oklahoma. And when you watch John Mateer and you watch when he is dialed in, you can tell he has some unstoppable qualities. He looks on the surface like he's crazy competitive. He is a guy that is really athletic. And I think he's a lot faster than you realize because at 220 pounds, he's not afraid to lower his shoulder and run through tackles. He can dance too. He's got some wiggle. If he needs to, he can move, he can get out. And he's also excellent throwing on the run. That's another thing that jumps out. When he escapes the pocket, especially to his right, he's very accurate on the move, and he has a great feel for where the line of scrimmage is. So when he takes off, it might look like he's going to run, which draws a bunch of defenders and their attention up and allows them to leave their coverage responsibilities, and he'll make them pay. He's got a really quick release, gets it over the top, and he creates really big plays on the move as a result of that feel for where the line of scrimmage is. So John Mateer, I think he's amazing. I think he's really, really good. I think Oklahoma has a star in the making and could be poised for a tremendous bounce back offensively if they can stay healthy at wide receiver. That was a huge if last year, but with the addition of Jaden Ott, with some of the pieces that are back at wide receiver, John Mateer has plenty of firepower and plenty of ability to reach his potential there in Norman. At number 1, the coveted number 1 spot here on the Always College Football annual quarterback rankings, we are going with Cade Klubnik of the Clemson Tigers. Now, I thought last year he did an amazing job. Threw for 3,600 yards, 36 touchdowns against 6 interceptions, 63% completion, but he also showed a willingness to contribute an awful lot with his legs. That was not something he did a ton of the year before. Last year, it became a lot more a part of how he attacked the opposing defense. He went for 463 yards on the ground, including 7 rushing touchdowns and including a couple of really long runs, one against Pitt, one against NC State, where he went for 50-plus yards. So he's got the potential and the wheels to take it the distance from a long way out. But I loved how much he improved from 2023. So I'm banking on that improvement only growing more significantly with another year in the offense with Garrett Riley, with another year developing a rapport with what I think is an outstanding wide receiver core. I think he's got 4 dudes on the perimeter that are top flight wideouts, and that's going to really help Cade Klubnik reach his potential this year. But he improved his touchdowns thrown by 17 from 2023 to 2024. He reduced his interceptions from 2023 to 24 from 9 to 6, even though he had 32 more passing attempts. And he was far more efficient pushing the ball down the field. If you actually look at some of the numbers from 2023, they seldom took chances. I mean, almost never. I looked up some of the numbers. 8% of his throws traveled 20 or more yards in 2023. But in 2024, 15% of his throws were 20 or more yards. That resulted in a 6.1 air yards or average depth of target in 23, 6.1. So the average depth of target was 6 yards downfield. Well, in 2024, it was nearly 9, 8.9. That's a huge, huge difference. And I wasn't sure. I thought maybe it was because he's not a great deep ball thrower. Well, and then we found out last year that he completed nearly 50% of his deep balls, which was one of the best, not just in the ACC, but in the entire country. He also had 13 touchdowns on deep balls, which is number 1 in the country. So the downfield throws and how he improved in those areas was massive from a year before, but it was also about how he improved as a runner. He had 19 carries of 10 plus yards. He had 2 50-yard runs, like I referenced against NC State and Pitt. I think that is also a huge indicator of where he could continue to grow. He had 8 games with more than 250 passing yards and reached 30 yards rushing or more in 9 of his games. So if you look at kind of where he's at, he can beat you in a lot of different ways. He's also, I think, been through the gauntlet of being a starting quarterback in college football as well, which means I don't just believe in his ability, I believe in his mental toughness. Because this is a guy that was getting criticized heavily in 2023. And I think when you are the golden goose and you get criticized and you live to tell the tale, put your head down, keep working, get better, and then come back in 24 and you're one of the best players in the country, that's a guy who I want on my team for sure. So the fact that he's been through the grinder and has lived to tell the tale and has come out the other end as a superstar tells me a lot about what this young man's made of and what he's going to do this year. Another aspect of what I've really been impressed with watching him this past season was just how comfortable he was when things went awry. Against the blitz last year, he had 12 touchdowns against 0 interceptions. Against the blitz. So he anticipates it, he sees it, he feels it, and he knows what to do with it when that pressure comes. So in as our number 1 quarterback here heading into the 2025 season, it's Cade Klubnik of the Clemson Tigers. That'll do it for us here at Always College Football. We appreciate those of you that have come to us from wherever you're coming to us from. If you're new to the show, because you like a top 10 quarterback list, we do this stuff for a lot of the positions. Check back with us at a later date. We've already done receivers. We'll do running backs. We'll do other positions of significance as well, maybe pass rushers, you name it, we'll do it. So we really, really look forward to continuing to populate your timeline with content like this here in the weeks and months to come. We also will continue to keep you up to date with what's going on with the big news here in college football on a week-to-week basis. So for all of us here at Always College Football, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day. And remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.